Hey, what up, everybody? How's it going? Yeah, we're back.
Hello.
I am
Long
Cody.
time no see, everybody.
I'm Cody Sandrowski. I'm a developer at Foundry Virtual Tabletop. This is the illustrious Oreo, Matt. Matt, what do you do?
It's a pleasure to meet you. I work with a bunch of our publishing partners, like somebody that you're going to hear about a lot more in a few minutes, Kobold Press, creator of Black Flag.
Before we go too far, can everyone hear us all right? Matt's mic could use more oomph.
Oh my! Oomph.
Oh, let me give it a little more oomph. How about now?
Here, and I'll try to pull this a little closer.
Yeah, let's just adjust 3 variables at once and then ask once if it's all right.
It's the way.
All right, I'm shouting, you're whispering. Turn you up. Turn me
Was
down.
Caligo the person who did the first PR, or is he just calling it out that it
He's
happened?
just calling it out. Okay.
Caligo, you're slipping. You need to start making PRs.
Better. Okay, very cool. I also
You have such a pretty background. That purpley pink.
Yeah. Do I? What? I usually use Bing wallpaper, actually. Don't call me out on it, but all right, now I'm low. All right.
You're the one user using Bing products.
Look, I'm used to being the 1 to 3 users using anything. 13th age Bing wallpaper. I bet I probably use Yahoo.
You're still using Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves for everything.
Isn't Ask Jeeves the original, like, Bing AI?
It's the OG Chat GPT.
All right. So, welcome everyone. How's it going? We're here to talk to you about Kobold Press's Black Flag as implemented by ours truly in Foundry. Released today for the very first time. Matt, what's Black Flag and why are we playing pirate music?
Black Flag is actually, Project Black Flag is a code name for a brand new game system from our friends at Kobold Press, and it's aiming to be compatible with D&D 5th edition, while also expanding beyond those standard rules with their unique Kobold spin, and it most importantly offers a perpetual, open, and irrevocable license, and anybody who doesn't know why that is an important thing at this moment had a much more peaceful past couple of months than we did, and I envy you. And Kobold Press, for anybody that doesn't already know, they're a publisher. They've been around for 17 years this month, actually, so they're doing an anniversary sale on their site if you want to check it out. And they make adventures and bestiaries and a whole bunch of awesome stuff. And now they're building the Black Flag system, and they've already got a bunch of their content on Foundry VTT. Black Flag is going to be no different, and we're working with them. We've actually officially partnered with them on Project Black Flag. And to do that, mostly Cody, but with a little bit of help from some other folks on the team, we put together this brand new Foundry VTT system that implements everything that they've got in their first playtest packet. And I'll post a link in a second to where you can check out the playtest packet and all of that other stuff. So you can start playing around and making your own characters. And I'm going to leave all the technical stuff to Cody, but that's the basics. And if you want to get involved, I'll post some links to our GitHub and all of that. It's all open source under the MIT license, I think, for the code for the game system. Is that right, Cody?
Yes. Some people are saying that maybe possibly my mic has a little bit of wind. It sounds like snoring to them.
Oh.
I don't know if I can fix that. I don't know if I can fix
I'm not
that
even
with
sure.
the skills I have.
I don't even know what that problem might be.
You might be hearing the vestiges of my cold as I breathe, so you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can just ignore the rattle as Cody talks and breathes.
I'm only
He's
on my last
fighting for his life.
As partners, we're allowed to use this wonderful image saying we're a partner. You're not allowed to download or use it. That would be illegal. Matt should not undersell himself. He did a lot of the character sheet CSS. The system is open source. We have focused with Playtest 1 about character building, which is what Kobold Press wanted to focus on. So Playtest 1, which we've converted and brought in as a lovely branded black and white with low dragon, again, courtesy Matt for his beautiful CSS skills there, has details about how to roll ability scores, which a lot of people were asking already. If you didn't know, Foundry can do. Oh, that's not the role group syntax. Foundry can do role group syntax where I can go ahead and say roll my scores, and it's 4d6 keep high 3, and then I can see all of the scores in each of their groups in one beautiful little thing.
They're pretty good.
Yeah. That was a good idea, Matt. Also, Matt put in a link to the point by, and the standard array is just right in there. So very nice. The Kobold Press is part of Black Flag Initiative. It's supposed to be Blackbird compatible with 5th edition, but that doesn't mean they're not making some changes. So first of all, we now have lineages, and that's separate from heritages. So lineages are things like, oh, my parents were dwarfs, but heritage are things like, yeah, my parents were elves, but I lived underground with a colony of people hanging out around the forge, smithing a bunch of things. So you're able to have a little more flexibility in what your builds are. And to keep that ethos in the system, we're going to show off some technical stuff about how we built some flexible things. We're going to show off some more user-facing UX about how we did some stuff. In fact, let's build a character now. So if we look at C.S. Wendrowski, one of the things we wanted to focus on right away was homebrew support. So I created a Mooseborn heritage. Doesn't really have a lot of details, but we can see that lineage. We can see it's an option. We can already see that from my cloud heritage, I have the common language. From my scholar heritage, I have the history proficiency. I can click that to open up more details about what those give. If I go over to my traits, there we have each of the things you can choose, such as from Scholar. Scholar gets us 2 skill proficiencies. I've already made my choices of history and religion, and this form locks up. I can't choose more than 2. If I unselect some, I can choose up to 2 more. If we go to, we have a little red X indicating we haven't actually made these choices yet. We have some more complex ones that I need to find. Let's see, is that soldier? So here, like soldier, you can have a proficiency with either land or water vehicles or with the tools. So if I choose a smith tool, looks like I forgot to declare that choose one or the other, but normally the other one would block off. There are going to be some rough edges, and if we got through a stream without finding a single issue, it wouldn't be a Foundry stream.
But and this is not even really a beta build. This is alpha. This is 0.0.3. Mm-hmm. So this is very early days, but we want to be able to show everybody how it's coming along and hopefully get the community working on it too. And it sounds like that's already happening today.
Yes, we wanted to build the base system to get set up with, rather than forking 5th edition, which a lot of people would want to do. 5th edition is the oldest system in Foundry. That comes with a little bit of cruft, as much as we love it. So we wanted to make a new system from scratch, clean organization, using DataModels, which we introduced in V10, showing some new ideas about how you can build systems so others can learn from it. We're going to get into those technical details in a bit, but first let's go through the process of creating a new character. So we got roll it. Let's go ahead and roll, and we'll plug in. We at least have our stats. Maybe we don't enter them right now. We've built a character builder. So if we go ahead and open this up, the first thing we want to do is pick our lineage. If we scroll, we can see the Mooseborn heritage lineage. I always mix those up. But we can go ahead and scroll through these and see what each of these are. Let's go ahead and build a dwarf. He's probably 150. They live up to 350. We can see that dwarves gives us dwarven resilience and toughness. So we're going to go ahead and choose that. Now we've updated in the left here that we are picked up dwarf. When we look at our sheet, it's already on our sheet, and we've inherited those traits. let's go over to our heritages. You know, we've got Cloud, we've got Cosmopolitan. You know, maybe this guy really likes Stone. Stone tends to be lawful good, perfect. It's going to give us weapon training, armor training, some tool proficiencies. Great. And finally, let's see. He's a dwarf. He works with stone. He could probably go either way of being a scholar or a soldier. Matt, what do you think?
I like the nerdy guy under the mountain. Let's go scholar.
Okay. And we gotta get our character
Studying
motivation.
the stone.
So he's adventuring to find the answers he desperately seeks, such as, you know, is it actually better? And we gotta choose a talent. Apparently I didn't set up the talents for scholars. I set up the talents for soldiers? I did. So actually we're choosing a soldier. I'm sorry to supersede you. We're actually returning the action that we've craved since our retirement to the Smiths.
Everybody wants to be a scholar, but sometimes you have to be a soldier, so that's okay.
I was being told that I'm hiding the bottom of the chat with our screens. Not much I'm going to do about that right now. So now we've
selected... all y'all are really missing is a choose button, so it's okay.
No, they can't see the choose button. So now we have our sheet, and now we can go through and actually start picking, like, what are our proficiencies, you know, maybe we'll do land vehicles. Not a lot of choices here. A lot of languages. And then we can see all those things updated on our sheet. We can update other things. Great, good to go. As a soldier with smithing, we probably want to be we did not get great rolls on our stats. We probably want to be pretty good at...
that's rough.
Probably want to be pretty good at strength and dex, con, and possibly wisdom, but we do have a 12. Maybe we can be a little charismatic. And then just dumping down to, -2s.
Yeah, nice. 6.
Nice. So, we've built a character. That is the extent of playtest 1. Is it, you know, is this character ready to go off and have adventures? Yes. Are you going to go off and have an adventure right now? Maybe not so much. We are still missing class, which is coming in the next playtest, hopefully dropping sometime soon. And the classes will come with things like, you know, spells, maybe equipment, you know, maybe a weapon to swing. But, you know, Black Plague is still in early development. Matt, when are they planning on actually kickstarting it?
The Kickstarter is definitely planned for 2023. I don't know if the exact month has been nailed down publicly, so I'm gonna waffle a little bit and not say anything in particular so we don't spoil anything for anybody. But the Kickstarter should be happening this year. Playtest 2 should be coming out before too long, like in the next few weeks. That should have classes and items and all of that stuff, so you can finalize finishing your character and actually get to a place where you could theoretically start running an adventure in it and really getting into the nitty-gritty of how all of the new stuff that they've added to Black Flag works, and start letting them know what you like, what you don't like, and what else you'd like to see. Because while it is 5th edition based and it's 5th edition backwards compatible and all that stuff, they're adding new stuff. Like, you can see some new things on the character sheet already, like luck and all that stuff, which I don't think has actually been fully nailed down yet. But what it's going to actually do...
Next playtest packet.
Yes, got it. But other than that, you're in a good place to get started, but there's a lot of technical stuff behind actually making this work, I think.
We're going to talk a lot of technical stuff real quick here. It's good. If you thought I was snoring before, the chat's about to real quick, unless you're a developer. But we've built in a nice little button that brings you to Kobold. Oh, I guess I closed the feedback for playtest 1 already. We'll have to update that with playtest 2 packet when it goes live real quick here. But if you have feedback about what these lineages do, what these heritages do, whether or not you think it's OP or not, whether or not you have cool new ideas like Mooseborn that should be included, you'll want to submit that feedback to Kobold Press. They're the ones developing this, publishing it, writing it. There's a bunch of third-party content already on the way for Black Flag. if you have feedback on the actual system and how the character builder works and things like that, that's where you can either get involved yourself or submit it to our implementation of the system. Showing off.
I definitely want to see Mooseborn, if not in the final system, in a module on day one that extends the system.
Showing off some of the final pieces of feedback here. UX, like we saw, we got armored training. We can go ahead and like remove that, and we can like add maybe armored combatant instead. And clicking that opens up what that does. For proficiencies, we can do type ahead search of Arcana and start adding that. As we saw before, like these get different colors and hover text for, did this come from one of my traits? Like, this came from my stone languages trait, or was this something I added myself? So your GM should have an easy way, and you and your GM should have an easy way of saying, I built my character correctly, or my GM let me choose this thing because it made sense for my background. It's not in the rules, but like I added it. You should be able to visually and quickly find out, where that thing came from. I guess we're ready to get into some nerdy stuff, huh?
Yeah, I think it's time to. What do you use? WebStorm?
Oh, I use WebStorm. Let's real quick so if you want to get involved, you can see we already have an open pull request. Thank you for Endless Night. We have an open source repository available on our GitHub. The code is open source, so the content is not. They're still working out the details of their license, of the orc licensing via Paizo's working on that, and I believe Project Black Flag is going to use it. When that's available, we'll make that more publicly available, but for now, the system itself is open source. You are free to contribute. And Matt, we both had
Jinx.
the same idea. So, the big reason we want to get involved with this, one, it's just an official partnership. We want to support Black Flag. Kobold Press already has a lot of content. Two, we want it to use this as a chance to people fork 5th edition all the time. But again, it's a super old system with a lot of features, and so it has the craft of 6 years of development under it.
Yeah, fun fact is, if anybody goes back and watches the Foundry Then and Now stream, D&D 5e used to be built into Foundry VTT for the first 2 or 3 versions. It shipped with Foundry and was part of the core software, and it wasn't until version 4 or something that it got pulled out. So it's as old as it can possibly get. And it's been updated and all of that, and there's still a lot of development going on in D&D 5e, mostly with Kim and quickly.
There's a 1.8 thousand commits to it. I don't think I can find how old it is.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of D&D 5e work that's already been done, and with that, there's a very strong base of features and strong code base and everything like that. But it is sometimes nice to have a clean slate to start everything off in, and that's what Black Flag is. This isn't a fork of D&D 5e. This is from scratch using all of the latest and greatest in Foundry data models and functionality.
Now, just like Black Flag is being designed to be backward compatible with D&D 5th edition, we have hopes of doing some fancy technology stuff to be able to import a 5th edition NPC or player character into the Black Flag system, possibly even the other way, but it hasn't been built yet. I got the question, what's the syntax for those role groups, which I've seen a couple times. That is, to do a role group from Foundry, this is a core feature. You wrap each role within these brackets with a comma, and we add a flavor to it to drop that message. But it's that easy. You can use that in any system. You can roll it yourself.
Yeah, and if you want the auto-expanding just a little bit higher in that function, there's an expand role function that gets defined that pretty much just adds a class to expand it. Easy peasy.
Yeah, that finds that tooltip and expands it and scrolls into view. I also saw the question of I saw a note, but how do you customize this? So if we go and look at how some of these are defined, to make it easy, we wanted to make it a little easier to homebrew things, add your own custom stuff without knowing a bunch of stuff. So if we look at, say, like World of Wonders, which is a trait on Cloud, to add proficiency here, you can just do type ahead and save, and it works. That's all you have to do. For some of the more complicated stuff, like, common and then 2 additional languages, we do have a JSON that lets us define, like, we're adding 2 additional languages from this category. Later on, the hope is to make that user configurable as well, but we want to make it really easy using the idea of traits that, both heritages have it and lineages have traits as well. We want to make it easy to just input this stuff and homebrew various stuff.
And for that code editor, what are you using for the code highlighting and everything? Is that Ace or?
Yes, so this is the community package Ace editor, Ace library actually. It bundled by Arcanist. If it's not enabled, it just falls back to a text editor. If it is enabled, it uses that fancy JSON editor, which makes it a little nicer to work with.
Yeah, and in the end, you won't need to do everything in JSON, but for right now, when we're building out stuff and the playtest is changing pretty rapidly, it's very nice to be able to do it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with a lot of things changing real quick, it's a little easier to not build that kind of complex stuff. So, one of the big things we want to leverage with building our own system is DataModels. They were added in V10. Matt, do you want to give the less complex version of what they are first?
Yeah, sure. So in layman's terms, we've got a nice image showing it off too. So in layman's terms, what that means is you can define the kind of data that you're expecting, and the type of data that you're expecting can also control like the type of checks that are applied. So if you were to, for example, make health, you could define that as like what the current value is, what the minimum value is, and what the maximum value is. And if all of those are set to be integers, then whenever you update health or something like that, it'll automatically be checked, like, is the value given an integer? Is the value given within the given range? Is the value provided at all if it's set to be required? And doing all of that makes it so that you're not going to wind up in a situation where the data in your Foundry actors or your items or anything like that is busted. Because something that happened in pretty much V9 and before DataModels got added is that you could try to push data into places where it wasn't supposed to go, and you might wind up with invalid data that you then couldn't update or fix or get back into the correct format at all. And now with DataModels, we can try to prevent that from happening to begin with, and it just makes everything a lot more reliable going forward whenever you're doing data migrations or anything, because you know what kind of data to expect, and so you know how you can change it for future versions or new fields or new playtest releases and stuff like that.
And to show off like some of those things, like if we go back to that character sheet, I defined attributes that they can't go into -10, so it will cap out at 0. So now I don't have to worry about people mistyping that or assuming that, and I don't have to write custom logic of validating that. That just works out of the box now. We got a fair number of fields that you can define. We're going to show what the black flag ones look like in a short bit here. Some of these are pretty straightforward, like this is a number, and the numbers can have like a min or a max. Some of these are like strings, and strings can have choices, like for the for setting the size on a dwarf lineage, for instance, all sizes are enforced to small or medium, so I don't have to again worry about like, oh, someone input a custom thing that I didn't expect. I know it's one of those choices. Some of these get a little more complicated. For instance, we use foreign document fields a lot, right? We don't store the data of a dwarf on your character sheet. We link to the dwarf lineage, and then we can load all that data dynamically because we know what it is. HTML fields, give us that nice,
And you can also start stacking data models in data models. So if you're using schema fields, or if you're using like array fields or anything like that, you can put inside of those like an array of strings, so you can have a whole bunch of text fields that can be repeating, or you can like max their length or anything like that. So it's very, very extensible. And anybody who's used like Django, or probably a lot of other MVC like web frameworks, are probably familiar with the idea of like models, model forms, and all that stuff. And it's super, super helpful.
And these were added in V10. V11 makes them even better, although Black Flag is being built for V10, so some of those things we won't show off today, but we have plans to do things in the future, like even generating a automatic, sheet, basic sheet based off your data model in the future. If we know it's a number and the number is between 1 and 10, then we can make it a range slider. If we know it's a string and it has a list of choices, we can make it a drop down instead. So there's a lot of value that will come in the future from this, and we'll show how we used it already in a bit here. And just to see what this looks like. In the past we had template JSON, which is like, here's the structure and here's the default value. And we had some support for min and max, but now we can do this in a little more reusable way. It's code defined. You can use JavaScript to actually set initial values. For instance, if I pull open my editor here and we go to the lineage data model, we had that color, which is how the color that's assigned to the lineage, so we can see what proficiencies came from it, and we set an initial value to a random color CSS value using JavaScript. That's something we never could have done before in template JSON. Also, I promise I'll actually make my text bigger than that when we get to more of the code.
But for now, everybody just lean in real quick.
Yeah, just everyone pull out your viewing binoculars. So, before we dig into some of the structure and organization and data models, any questions from the audience? Anyone want to see something again? Anyone?
Probably something important. I'll fill in questions while I wait for the audience, because I actually don't know what it does, but the enable V10 validation, I see that set to true, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so when we added data models in V10, we forgot to actually turn on validation for them automatically, and we caught that later on, but we didn't want to break everyone's stuff, so we made it a option. So you can, in V10, set that flag, create a data model, but it won't actually strictly validate unless you turn that option on. So that's a way for you to start dabbling your toes into it in V10. In V11, you don't need that. It just strictly validates by default.
And then after that, we've got a question from Awake42 saying that they see you still have the template.json. Is that still needed with the new data model setup, or can you skip out on it entirely if you're starting a game system from scratch using data models?
Good question. So in V10, you do still need to define a little bit of it, but as of V11, you'll be able to only have to define the actual types of it, and then that's it. That's all you'll need to define. Everything else will pull from the data models.
And then I think a new user, probably named Caligo, sent in a question.
He's pretty
How much
new.
does data model... He's a pretty new guy. How much does data model strictness affect the potential for homebrew rule sets implemented by modules or world scripts?
Yeah, so data models enforce a specific object, but you can give room to add additional things. For instance, there's only currently small and medium sizes. But if a module wanted to add a large size, they could update the data model to add that additional option. And this is a little bit as a system, you should probably define in Black Flag, that's fine. Let me find my constants file quick. We define all of the proficiencies and sizes as a constant, and then use that as the yeah, there's our race sizes. So, this is where I define the constants of race sizes, small, what the label is, and then in my lineage, I say that it's a string field that defaults to medium, and the choices are that race size. So if a module updates that value, they don't even have to insert anything to the data model, they just update the constant, and then it pulls through. You can define custom data models. You can define object fields, which don't have a strict data inside. We use that for our flags field in core. I probably shouldn't stream core code, huh? But it is possible to be strict where you want and not strict in other places. So there is still an opportunity for homebrew and extension.
And I know with V11, obviously that won't impact, this won't impact the V10 version of Black Flag, but V11 is including support for modules being able to add custom subtypes and everything. So that should also make it easier to expand with homebrew later on as well.
Yes. All right.
And those custom types for items and actors and stuff like that for anybody who hasn't been deeply following our release for V11 yet.
Yeah, custom subtypes are going to be really incredible for doing things like adding party sheets. You'll be able to set up your own data models with those custom subtypes to enforce them as well. You can make those extendable by other people. In fact, if it's like, I'm a module, I want to extend, say, the lineage type data model. First, let's show you where I organize that. One thing that we use is we use a hooks folder, which has every hook. So if we look at the top level Black Flag MGS, let me know, by the way, if this is the right font size. It's hopefully big enough, but I can make it even bigger. Let's ignore that debug hook. But, here I'm just hook up, once on init, we're going to run the init hook, and then dev mode ready, and then render settings, and then we can go down into the actual, this is all of our code for initialization. First thing we do is set that, import the constants and set a top level variable to reference it. We then register our data models by saying config actor system data models, and then the type PC, and then the data model. So just like a module can add a new sheet with the registration, a module can also update, add, override the data models for the document types as well.
I'm just dropping into the chat right now a couple links to our introduction to system data models and also just our general article on how V10 and onward data models work for anybody who's interested in checking those out. Mm-hmm. And eventually that'll also be in the YouTube description and stuff like that.
And at least with module subtypes, if you make a custom type like a party type and then you disable that module, we won't vend that document. But what happens if you make a character with a tiny size that's homebrew and you disable the module? That's up to you and how you validate the data, but one option is you don't vend that character because it's no longer possible to actually render them. The module doesn't exist anymore, you don't have support for that, or maybe instead you fall that back to a supported size like small, because you know what the valid types are, you can do those kinds of migrations. Or you don't strictly validate it, and, it's fine, but...
And then we just get to see what happens.
Then we just, Oh, we got a lot of choices. If you guys can't hear the pirate music now, it's quite loud for me, and I need to probably turn it down.
I can hear it on the stream when over our talking when I just turned it back on, so hopefully everybody else can hear it too.
So let's see. Let's talk about some other organization here. So we use a modern GitHub workflow. It takes all of the files and then builds them up into a system zip and publishes it. Nothing too On bosses in chat, minor correction, documents with an invalid type are still vended to the world. From the technical concept of vend, meaning it's sent to the client. The documents would be an invalid state and with the fallback base type. Yeah, I guess I used vend in the wrong context for a very technical stream.
And one of the cool things that you're doing with the GitHub build process right now is that you actually have it built up so that there's the system, and then there's also a separate module for system data, compendium packs, and all of that stuff, so that the licensing for that can be handled completely separately from the game system.
Correct. So we utilized, required modules. So we went ahead and required that module, so it will automatically install when you install the system. It automatically enable. You can't turn it off. Later on, we'll probably make that either like a recommended thing module in V11, or possibly just going to go back in the system. Not entirely sure yet. But that lets us, keep the code free and open, and the content in whatever state it needs to be until they figure out licensing. Always the least fun part of publishing.
Do we ship out the or make visible somewhere the GitHub workflows?
Yes, the GitHub workflows are also open source.
Okay, cool.
Although we're just using the community one, so
So it's already out there for anybody who wants to use it.
We contribute to the community. We benefit from the community. That's the value of open source. One thing that we did for this is we're rather than using a gulp file to compile less into CSS, or we're using something called post CSS. Post CSS is implementing proposed standards for the future of modern native CSS now. So we're able to do things like nested CSS and imported CSS, which is pretty much what less looks like. So this is the actual generated CSS that we ship. If we go look at post CSS, I have a top level black flag. I have nested rules. I have imported rules for the journal and the PC and the character builder. That then, without needing a bunch of it does require the post CSS tooling, but one day in the future we'll be able to delete the post CSS toolings. It will be native in all the browsers. It will just work. tm.howard.
Yeah, so if all you use from less or anything like that is CSS nesting, which I don't know about everybody else, but that's pretty much all that I use, because the rest of the features start to get too complicated and working in CSS is already hard, then you can be ready to ditch gulp and less and all that other stuff. Not soon, but relatively soon in terms of CSS standards.
So we got CSS that's organized per thing. So we got some general stuff, like these are this is the types of fonts that we use. But we also have our sheet styles. We have our character builder styles. We have our PC sheet styles. This lets us keep the CSS modular and make it easier to do. And following best practices, it's targeted to those things so they don't leak out to other sheets. Yes, source code is available. Matt can post the link.
I'll post a link real quick. There you go.
I gotta say, one thing that's always bothered me is one of the original templates that got cloned was called everything the /module folder, and even systems like 5th edition then use /module for all of their code. So there we go. It's /system for the system. I know, an absolutely incredible change. But all our data models are organized into a folder so we can see them by document type. So we got one for the player character. We got a bunch for the different items. We also have some that don't belong to a document, like our trait. Our trait is those things that are shared by everything. Traits have things like innate proficiencies and the builder info we were looking at. you can see again that we have, images where we can set like to the initial, file path of, certain icons we ship. Yeah, I see a bunch of people like, oh, I thought that was like, why, just because of ESM modules. No, pretty sure someone just originally cloned like a template repo, like, or I'm not sure. Anyway, not required.
I think Endless Nights kind of says something that is part of why we're working so hard on the Black Flag system, which is I was always confused by that, but I kept doing it because 5e did as well. And that's one of the things that we're hoping to improve is a lot of people like look at 5e and they're like, hey, that's an official Foundry VTT system. I'm going to model everything that I do off of that. And the 5e system is a good place to do that, but it doesn't have all of the most modern things that Foundry supports now. So hopefully this will be a good new system for people to look at and draw inspiration for their own systems.
Also, it's just so big now. And
Yeah.
The other system we do is just simple world building. Most people don't need dynamically created properties, so not really a good starting point either. So traits aren't documents. Traits are embedded data. So if we go ahead and look at say our heritage traits, it's an array. It could also be a set of embedded data type, and that type is that model. So we enforce that, whenever that data is updated, it meets that. And then we can share that with, say, our lineage, and our lineage has the same default, and so we can define it once and share it across those places. Cool stuff. We got our actual documents, like our actor. One thing that is coming in V11 that's not in V10 is DataModels will be able to prepare their own derived data. So right now I'm doing something where it's like, if this is a PC versus, eventually it will be an NPC, I want to prepare the PC's derived data. Later on, I'll be able to put that right in the player character data model itself. And rather than having an actor file that's just thousands of lines long. We already talked about the hooks, and then the sheets are organized again by document type, like actors. We also got our apps that, like our forms, our character builder form. Nothing too surprising here if you've done Foundry development. Just, again, organized by document type to make it easier to connect, and then our templates are again organized by actor type. It's pretty easy to find, and because we anticipate people forking this and such, we've make sure to comment things fairly heavily. So it's like, this is the whole block for experience, this is a whole block for age. We're using all of our new helpers. We're using we added a couple custom helpers as well. And one thing, we've organized everything by field sets. So if you don't know what a field set is, that's the wrong screen. A field set is a set of fields, somewhat obvious from the name, but by default it draws this box around, say, all of these ability scores, and then gives it a little label that's called a legend. So if we take a look at the HTML here quick, we've additionally gotta figure out I should just dock this. 1 second. No. Doctor right.
And yes, this will be available on Twitch as a VOD and in YouTube in the future. Oh, jinx now.
Jinx. So, field sets are organized, and then they have their legend of what it is. We even can add little icons and buttons like we did here, and then each form group is inside of it. That draws with that box by default. We just bolded it a bit more with that thicker black to make it look more Black Flag. But that's something...
one of my favorite things about field says is it's just another way of dividing your code up in a way that's not just using a div, so you have a little bit more semanticness to how you're dividing things, which is always nice.
I'm trying to think if we use them anywhere else that isn't. Yeah, this is what they look like by default. So this little like thin line and then the name. Full credit, I saw it in Pathfinder and was like, wow, that's really cool. And so I started using it.
Again, the beauty of open source.
Yep.
We have somebody asking if we've considered using HTML tables for the inventory and item list panel.
We have not seen the rules for inventories or items lists yet, so we haven't thought about them very much. That said, we're likely going to define them like most Foundry systems as like there is an item and it has a set of fields and then you can own those items on your character sheet. I understand why HTML tables are... Yeah. Oh, do you mean for like the actual display or just for input? Because those are two different questions.
I think they're talking about displaying it, because I think I remember seeing a similar question earlier.
There's nothing that should stop us from just using native tables to display items.
Yeah, and I think whether or not we wind up using that or something else, like an unordered list or something, will just come down to what data we need to make visible to people right away, what's the most useful information to have on hand, and what the best way of putting that together is. That might be tables, but tables can sometimes be a little finicky in their responsive nature, and since we like to typically have resizable application windows for character sheets and stuff like that so people can move it around, tables may not be the best option, but it'll definitely be considered.
I saw a question with the advent of data models. Are we going to revamp some of the systems like Pathfinder 2nd Edition or D&D 5e? D&D 5e is something we develop or work with the community to develop, which is the goal for Black Flag as well. And that already uses data models as someone commented, version 2.1. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a completely community developed ordeal. They use their own setup using TypeScript and such, which enables, they have a huge dev team, like 30 people. So they could
bigger
probably
than the Foundry team.
Yeah, they probably move faster by not but they are an official system. We do talk with them, we do like help them out, and I believe they are starting to look at using data models. And the boss just commented they are working on, the work is partially done.
Yeah, they've got a lot of things to convert. They have a very extensive game system
with a lot
of moving parts. Yeah, and since they haven't been using data models, they're also going to have to work through making sure that they're properly supporting everybody who may have data that doesn't align with what they're defining their data models as. So I'm sure it's a lot of work for them.
Yeah, data models are definitely one of those things that's best to use if you're starting from scratch, and it's harder to use if you already exist, because, again, you don't know what that data looks like then. You don't have that safety.
And Radiation says, so basically you're banking on Black Flag being the 5e replacement, like with regards to Foundry adventures and such. Not necessarily. Black Flag is aiming to be 5e compatible, backwards compatible. So hopefully our adventures that we've already done, like Demon Queen Awakens and House Divided, will work in Black Flag, but we're not planning on, giving up on D&D 5e or anything like that.
I believe all of our in-house adventures going forward are going to be built on that fish RPG of the fish in a group with the knife. Probably not.
But we're definitely excited about Black Flag, and obviously working to make it successful, and we'll see how things go, and if the community likes it.
Oh, right. So we showed off like how you can use some native elements like field set. Let's talk about that Typeahead search, because that's actually also a surprisingly a native featured HTML.
HTML?
So if I go find, let's see. So if I go look at our talents, so ignoring the above for a bit, we have an input, and that input defines a list And that list is system talents list. And that it then points to a data list that renders an option for each of the talents. So if I go back to my character sheet and I reopen my inspector and look at this, we can see there's a data list that's hidden, and it has the ID and the label of each of these. And when you click into it, you can, in Firefox, it shows you just the label. In Chrome, it shows you the ID and the label. Well, I can start typing into this, and it will search that data list for those things. And when I click it, it inserts the value. That is the native functionality. You can use it for things like, picking from a list of strings. We do it for proficiencies. Proficiencies don't need that ID, so we just have the label, which is uppercase, and the ID out lowercase. Where we then take over is, one, when we first render, we render a list of currently chosen talents as a content link that gives us that click through, so you can open up the talent and see what it is. And we add a little delete button that lets you remove it. And then we have in our character sheet, this text is so big for me.
Yeah, it's about 4 times as much scrolling as you'd normally need to do.
Yeah.
While you're hunting for that, Radiation also just asked another question. Have you thought about writing documentation where you really go into depth about these things? If you check out the Foundry VTT API documentation, it actually is, it's very in-depth. It's maybe not organized in the easiest way for somebody who's completely new to everything to dive into it. But we do also have in our knowledge base an intro to system development, an intro to system data models, and also an intro to development in general, and an intro to module development. So anybody that's interested in making their own system can get started with those resources, and then both the system development, module development, and discussion channels in the Discord are great places to go to ask questions. And we're always working on trying to improve our documentation, but there's a certain amount of getting started with such a big project of developing a system that will require, a bit of digging in. And if you're interested, you can also check out the boilerplate system, which you can find on the Foundry VTT wiki, which is a community-driven wiki. And I believe it's Asacalypse who developed the boilerplate system, and it will give you kind of a nice, it's not a GUI, but it'll give you a nice way of entering like what kinds of actors you want and automatically generating a lot of this system data for you. And it will give you a strong, consistent base that a lot of other system developers use, so that you can be able to ask questions and be using a structure that other people are familiar with, and hopefully be able to help you with if you run into problems.
So the question, do you use any test frameworks? Not currently in Black Flag. Inside of Foundry itself, we use Jest, but DataModels does make it easier to do unit testing and such, because, again, you know what the data is, you know what it's expected to be. You can construct, say, a player character and then go run tests against that data. That said, as always, it's a little hard just because, we're about to talk about, the click-through event for that input change. It's a little hard to test that kind of stuff because it's a lot of DOM manipulation. So, on that talent input change, when the text changes, we currently get its current value, and we have a cached list of all talents that exist in the system that we'll talk about how we got later. If it's not one of those, we know that they're either still typing or that they haven't selected something yet, so we don't need to do anything. But if it is one, then we know that they either typed in the ID correctly, unlikely, for a talent ID, but they might have typed in Arcana correctly by themselves. Then we can go ahead and create a new link. It's one of those content links, so we create it with an item and its UUID to point to it. We bind a click listener to it so it can open up. We create a new row to hold it. we create a delete icon and bind a button to delete it, and then we insert it. Sorry, my medicine's wearing off. we insert it below so that it adds to that list, and then the delete removes them from the list. And then in our submit data, we grab all talent links that currently are rendered on the sheet, and we grab their ID, and that's what we store to the character. So that lets us, give that nice UX of Typeahead search and clicking this to complete, while still storing it as a list of IDs on the character. We use that for talents, which are rendered as the more full buttons, and for proficiencies, which are just these little colored tags of text that instead open up, some where they came from if they're innate or a choice. But that's two different ways to render the same idea of native data lists.
Yeah, and generating those as content leaks has the nice additional feature of you click on them and you can find out more detail about it. You hover over it and you can find more details about what the structure of the element is and all of that stuff too.
All right, so as part of that example, we yes, Caligo mentions we could be using handlebar partials to render that whole content link in one go and then insert it. That's a valid point. I expect a PR Caligo. You can't quite claim PR1, but PR2 pretty good still.
Yeah.
So as part of that, we saw that we had a cache list of what talents are available in the system. So we store this system object, and we can see the list of all, say, lineage documents and all talent documents stored by their ID to their data. This is part of that foreign document concept. So if we actually look at the data on a character sheet, we can see, if we look at the source, we can see that a heritage is just the ID, a lineage is just its ID. Talents are, well, we don't actually have a talent currently saved to this one, but we're just stored as IDs. It keeps it small, it keeps it portable. It means if the dwarf lineage updates throughout the playtest, you get those updates immediately without having to rebuild the character. But when we prepare the data, we build a list of all world and compendium lineages, deduplicate them, and then make them available at that list under config system talent documents, for instance. That then lets us validate that this is a valid talent, that lets us load the data efficiently, that lets us have our moose born without it being a second-class citizen. And here we can see in the actual prepared data on our system lineage, we have a lineage idea of what its original thing was, but we also have our full mooseborn lineage. And if we were to make an update to the mooseborn lineage, we would get that data the next time we refreshed. To accomplish that kind of workflow, we have a step in. Let's just step in order. First, we prepare our ability score mods. That's just a pretty simple thing where we turn, standard, fantasy ability scores, 20 to 21 is a +5. So we grab all those and then we update the abilities to be what's its value and what's its actual mod. We then prepare foreign document data. So if we haven't loaded it before, we're not going to have any documents. This is not the most intelligent check in the world, but we know we ship backgrounds, so it works all right. Loading foreign documents then gets all documents from the world first, and then we go through all packs and make sure that they're a pack of the right type and grab their documents as well. And then we dedupe them and organize them alphabetically and set them up so now they're available to everyone without additional query. That means, third-party modules or any other thing we build in the future can reference that list of what are all the lineages available quickly in memory, no additional work. We then utilize that list after loading it inside the prepared derived data. For those who don't know, especially with data models, you have the source of what's stored in the database, and then you have what's actually derived. And this is where you can do things like, well, I don't need to store the mod of the ability, but I can store the ability. I need to score what is their ability score for strength, and then I can derive what the mod is. In this case, we store the background and lineage IDs, and then we derive out, a copy of the current lineage. I saw a question that Matt just asked, will 5e modules be compatible with the Black Flag system? Probably not. That one I feel pretty confident about. Yeah. Because the code is different, because the data structures are different, the ideas might work, but even some of the ideas are going to change a bit. For instance, there's not as far as we know, they're replacing the what's the system where inspiration. They were replacing inspiration with luck. So obviously your inspiration management modules probably won't work. For content itself, we're hoping to build something that turns your data from a 5e NPC or whatever into a Black Flag one, which should mean you can load up 5e adventures and such, but we haven't built that yet.
Yeah, we have to wait to see what the final rules wind up being before we can make any guarantees on that, but it is something that we're hopeful to do.
One thing to call out while we're looking at this, so as we mentioned, traits are on each lineage. Traits are things like Dwarven, Resilience, Poison, Save Advantage, things like that. So we grab that off of each place that can have it, make sure we grab its color so we can, assign it later. And then we also have to keep track of what choices were made for things that are choose 2 languages or choose one, thing. So we duplicate those out as well. We do a bunch of JSON parsing. I don't know if we're going to get into that. That's even more technical than that's certainly not something many systems will want to do. But then now that we have that list of all traits and trait choices, we can build, these are all of our proficiencies, the ones we've chosen for our character that exist on our character, the ones that are innately on traits on our lineages and such, the ones we've chosen for our character based on choices that are available on that lineage. So those are 3 sources. We build them, we set their source so we know where they came from, so we can display that and open up their sheets later, and then we store it on the character. This kind of data preparation, again, was going to be a lot harder without data models because we couldn't guarantee that all of this data was nicely structured and that the trait was actually a trait. If we go ahead and look, we can see that it's just a nice clean list of 5 traits on the actor, and what things they give. Which then we can render, in our proficiency section and such. Let's see. Let's double check. I ran out of Creative Commons royalty-free pirate music.
I guess we can go back to normal fantasy stuff, because this is for the core fantasy system.
Okay. Gotta update the Discord, the YouTube audio source.
Oh yeah, it's a little finicky. We have a new question from Awake42. Do you plan to support more languages, and how would you handle journal entries and other compendiums in multiple languages? And while you're setting up the stream source, I can talk to a little bit about that. I think the character sheet is already localized, so you should be able to create a new language JSON file, and that should be legible and then automatically replace things in the character sheet like lineage, heritage, background, and stuff like that, so long as you provide the appropriate translation strings. In terms of journal entries, that winds up being a little bit more of a complicated thing, doesn't it? I know there's been some work there recently.
Yeah, so there's still not an amazing way to like localize journals. The easy built-in way is to just offer a say German version of the same journal, and then people grab the one they want. There is a pretty popular community module called Babel that can do it, and they can also localize actors and items and things like that. I don't know if we'll build a bespoke way to do that localization, or if we'll just use Babel ourselves. But I know that's something that we're looking at. You know, in core, how do we do that better? You know, we like supporting and recommending community modules, but when there's a need everyone has, saying, well, you have to use this module, isn't the answer we like to give, right? But since Black Flag is going to, I don't actually know if they've announced if they're going to localize it. I assume so, but
We'll
I
have
believe
to wait and see until they finish writing it, I guess.
yeah.
But at the very least, anybody should be able to create custom language definitions for the Foundry system and make that available to anybody who's looking to use them.
You know, taking a look at the list we jotted down, I think we've covered all the things we wanted to. You know, what are data models? How did we use them in Black Flag? I can pull open a more complicated one.
One thing I'm curious about, because Radiations was talking about how it can be a little complicated to get started looking at how to interact with like a full-fledged system. Maybe we could walk through, if you wanted to add something to the system, where you would go to do that. Like if you wanted to add something to the character sheet, where would you need to make changes to do that?
Yeah, it's a good idea. What do you want to add, Matt?
Let's say we're going to add classes to Black Flag. Where are you going to start with that?
That's a good question. So, a class is going to have to be a new type of item. So we're going to want to add confetti to Caligula's, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to need a new data model. We're going to need a place on the sheet to show that option. We're going to need to update the character builder. So that's probably a good exercise to also show how the character builder works. If you can distract people for just long enough for me to refill my water and blow my nose, we'll go through that exercise.
Yeah, sure. So for anybody who's just coming to the stream, we're talking about Kobold Press's Project Black Flag, which is a 5e compatible game system that we've officially partnered with them to help them put together. All of the code is MIT open source. I'll post a link to it in the chat for anybody who wants to check it out. We've already got our first pull request, so there's already community developers that are looking at this. Kobold Press has out playtest packet 1. This is a game system that's 5e compatible, but is going to go in new directions as well. So if you're interested in getting in at the ground floor for a game system that's getting built out, now is about as good of a time as any to do so. If you're overwhelmed looking at how game systems work or how to build your own, currently the full system isn't built out because the full rules aren't built or aren't written yet. They're getting built out piecemeal and then reviewed by the community and updated by Kobold Press. So now is a good time to start poking around at the game system, seeing what commits are going in, listening to the community talk about it, where to make changes and all that stuff. And hopefully that can be a good source for you to get started learning system development. And if you want to get started doing system development and you want to do your own game system, you can always check out our KB, where we've got an intro to system development, system data models, and all of that stuff. And we have a very, very helpful community in our Discord. And you can also check out the League of Extraordinary Foundry VTT Developers.
Nailed it.
A long name with an equally long list of helpful members that will be happy to walk you through anything that's confusing, just as long as you have a little bit of patience.
Caligo caught me. I always forget that I have to mute OBS when I'm streaming, and not just Discord. No drinking? No, I gotta drink still. Okay, so the place we're going to start with adding a class is a data model, which will help us get a good idea for how those are built. So if we take a look at, say, like, our player character has, like, its level and its experience and its health, all sorts of stuff. We're going to like how we, even already had an entry in here for a class. That doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead
This was extra credit.
Yeah, extra credit. So let's go ahead and clone, like, say, Heritage. Heritage already has, a lot of what a class is going to need. So we get fields like name and image for free. Like, all things have those. A class is going to have a description. We're going to have a color again, just to keep track of, like, oh, this is what my class gives me with visual. We don't need alignment. What else does a class have? It's probably going to have traits again. Maybe not. We don't know that for sure. I guess we can just remove that for now to simplify our code. Or else do classes tend to have a weapon that they tend to have, right?
Yeah, name probably be good.
Like I said, we get name for free.
Oh, we got name for free. Sorry, I was looking at links. What else? Class abilities, obviously, got to have those.
Is template JSON being replaced with these data models? No, you're always going to need a template JSON, but as of V11, you're going to be able to define just types like this and register your data model, and then everything else will just run through the data model. You said one other thing for class.
Class abilities, we'll need some of those. That might fall under traits, though.
And Boss says, hopefully one time in the future, template JSON will be gone completely.
We're coming for your template JSONs, folks.
And here, we're probably going to have a couple weapon types. We actually already have a couple constants, I believe. Yeah, because weapon types are also proficiencies. These are probably going to be like the weapons that your class likes to use. It probably also has, like, uses magic as a Boolean field. I'm not sure that's how they have it set up, but some classes can't cast magic. Yeah, it is spellcaster Boolean. Okay, so now we have a couple bits of data. We don't need this one anymore. On our player character, we already had this line, but this is the right thing to do. We're going to need a basic sheet for it.
I may have given you too big of a task.
Oh,
to have
no,
to do live on stream.
we'll get this done. So we're going to clone the heritage config, and we're going to make it a class config instead. This is how we do CSS styling for it. We don't need traits, so we can delete all that. Great.
Yeah, and for anybody wondering why this is in the item subfolder, that's because in Foundry, everything that's not like an actor, journal, all that stuff, it all falls under items, and then items have separate types, so you can have a type of feature, a type of class, all that good stuff. And so we organize everything under that parent folder.
And again, this is nicely commented, so I know I don't need the alignment. We're keeping description. We don't need traits. But we did add... Let's look at it side by side. We added weapons and uses magic. So, uses magic is going to be an easy one. We're just gonna look at that. Look how fast I can code, Matt. Let's see. It didn't
Code it right in your name. You were, through nominative determinism, destined to be a programmer.
I always forget what our handlebar helper is for checked. I guess what it gave us is fine, but we have a helper for that I need to relook up with our API docs. Caligo says this is helpful. Actually, let's show people how you actually look at the API docs. So we're going to go to the API docs. We're going to go find our handlebar helpers. In fact, there it is. There's handlebar helpers checked. We have there we go. I put the exclamation, the pound sign in front of it, and I just need. Perfect.
And then we are much prettier docs than they used to be too. Because this is using JS doc now, I think, or has been.
TS doc. Now weapons are a set, and that's going to be a little more complicated to do. So let's, for now, not render that. We've set up the sheet. We've set up the template for the sheet. We can see in class config that this extends item document sheet, and item document sheet is automatically loading at the template systems, black flag system, templates, items, class config sheet, HBS, so we don't need to register that there. Just do it. So now over in our init hook, we're going to register that as a new sheet.
It's crazy the amount of things that you can get for free if you just store stuff in the same place.
I know, right? So that loads our class. We got a couple custom handlebar helpers here for things like where did I use that? I truncate something somewhere. I might not use. Where do I use truncate now? Let's find it.
Just start filling in every field with something way too long, and we'll see when it gets truncated. And
Okay,
then we'll know.
we truncate the descriptions and such on traits. So if we go like if we go click on this right here is truncated, but we can see in the tool text the rest of the description. Okay, nice. So we've registered our sheet. We've added our type. We need to register our type too. So okay, we've registered it. We have our data model. That's what we registered there. We registered our document class. We registered our document sheet. You know what we need to do still? We do need to, in our template JSON, register that as a new type.
Man, and this is while you're sick and you're remembering all of this. I'm impressed.
You know,
I'd be making each change, saving, reloading, be like, oh, it's still not working. I guess I have to go do something else.
I'm gonna have to relaunch the world because it's almost like I've done this a lot recently, Matt.
Yeah.
All right, so if I haven't messed up, yes, we have a new class like fighter.
Hey. So far, so good.
We got a couple data model validation errors. So if we go back to our
I'm watching you do it on the Twitch stream, so I'm a few seconds behind, so I was still optimistic while your hopes had already been crushed.
So if we go back to our class MJS, which was already open, it said that we don't actually require the, we don't have a description when we start. That makes sense. We don't actually need to require a color.
And Blue Frog, we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Project Black Flag, the playtest material, the current system implementation, how data models work, and, you know, a whole bunch of other good stuff. It'll all be available as a VOD, though, so you're welcome to watch it on Twitch or on our YouTube channel, which I think is Foundry now? Or, actually, YouTube supports now, so youtube.com/@Foundry VTT. And you'll be able to find this probably in the next day or two.
Ta-da, we actually managed to do it, fighter. Obviously, the most important thing we ever do is to set a icon for it.
So now you can choose from one of the thousands of beautifully organized icons that Kobold worked on.
And you don't need, let's see, there's our things. We go ahead. And now if we go to our new actor, what we haven't done is we haven't added a way to set your class here. So back over to our PC config HBS, right where we render things like our alignment and background, we can render our class.
And radiation, that's a astute observation. It does look a lot like Django models, and we actually do use Django for our web stack, or at least part of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of inspiration pulled from their
Absolutely.
model.
Especially if you start doing querying in our new database in V11, it looks a lot like Django.
Just re-implement Django.
I can't be mad about that.
Honestly, no.
Okay, over our character, we are going to need to actually over our actor preparation. We need to like how we loaded the foreign data for everything else. We're going to
And while you're doing that, Blue Frog UK has asked if we have discussed the most important question, which is, what is your favorite kind of biscuit? Which threw me off at first. I didn't know what that might mean, and then I remembered that I believe that the folks in the UK call cookies biscuits. And so to that I say Oreos are the best cookie. I don't know about Cody, though. Do you think that it's Oreos, or do you think that it's something wrong?
No, I think Oreos is absolutely an excellent cookie. I've recently found Java chip Oreos that just a little bit of like
Oh yeah.
Coffee flavoring and little chunks, tiny chunks of chocolate. Super good.
That's the nice thing about Oreo, is if you don't like Oreo flavor, don't worry. There's a million other Oreos for you.
Yeah, it's like, I'm pretty sure at this point you can buy Oreos down to the millimeter of how much filling you want. Now, Matt, from my show notes, since we're talking about it, I do see I asked you how many Oreos can you fit stuff in your mouth at once.
And I will say the exact same thing I wrote in our show notes, is that it depends. Are we talking single stuff, double stuff, triple stuff, most stuff? I can get most of these out of my pantry right now and confirm, but I don't know off the top of my head. I guess like 2 or 3 double stuff maybe.
Pretty good.
That depends. It might have to start unhinging after that.
All right, one final thing we need to do here is context class types, context class info, and we should have everything we need to refresh and go to our character, and tada, there's our class. So now we have successfully added a class. Almost. We still have our character builder. We definitely want to add to the character builder, right? So let's talk about how the character builder works. That's Foundry's code. Let's not stream that. So the character builder has, it's an application. It has a lot of data. We're going to add its object is the character. If we've already selected a class, we're already done. If we select the class's step, we're going to want to change to that step. We prepare data for each sub-step using, like, it's essentially like rendering a partial. I should probably make it a full partial. No, I do use a partial. Good job, me.
It's always great when you realize that you did something in a smart way in the past at some point.
So all we're doing here is we're preparing the list of what all options we have. We're going to enhance the HTML because we're not running through a full item sheet, so we need to do that manually. And we don't need to prepare any more data for each class option, so we should be good there. We need a way to submit that change when we actually make a choice. I'm just so good at coding, aren't I? Look how,
Look at how fast. How do you even write like 6 lines of code at once?
I know. Someone asked
You must have one of those special keyboards.
Yeah, I suppose I should await this. It doesn't really matter. It's currently a hacks. You can await it. You cannot await it. Both work. Probably should await it. That's a more modern way. Okay, so this does all the submitting. That said, we do still need a custom renderer for what a class looks like. So if we go to our forms, we're going to copy the heritage again. This one's a class. We're not using alignments. We're not using traits. We have our description. There's our checkbox. Ta-da, we just made a template. And then over and the actual character builder. The only thing we have to do left is add a new high-level step for the class. If it's completed, we mark it. If it's completed, we set the image to what that class is. Turns out using repeatable structures for how you do things makes it easy for Copilot to just do what you want. All right, so let's refresh everything because we should have added it successfully.
Fingers crossed. Everybody hold your breath.
And ta-da! Remember, we've already chosen our fighter from the drop-downs. But if we go select here, we probably shouldn't make that an enabled. You shouldn't be able to choose this, right? So if we go back here to our class option, we should disable this checkbox. It should render and show you whether or not it uses magic, but not let you actually choose if it uses magic.
Unless they decide to make fighters be able to use magic optionally for some reason.
Yeah, so what have we learned from this exercise? Use GitHub Copilot and you'll be a system dev in no time. Let's go ahead and add a second choice here.
But really, that was a crazy amount of things to add, and I think you did it in 10 minutes. You added the concept of a class, added support to it.
I wouldn't say it's the full concept of a class, but
well, it's the concept. It's not the
it's the rough,
ideal
abstract idea.
You could gesture at it wildly, and if someone looked at it squinting, they might think that it was a class, and that's pretty good for not having anything before. But it's pretty cool that with that amount of work, it's able to be added to the character sheet, to the character builder. It's got option support. You can use icons, and it looks like a real Foundry class. You can create it as an item. You can do pretty much anything that you want to.
Oh, we managed to do a bug on stream. It didn't actually choose. How does a pop-in work when selecting class? Let's look at the sheet here, and I can help explain. So everything here is the left sidebar with all those steps. So that's this part here. It renders out the list of steps. Everything under it is an options panel that currently starts empty. When we click a new option, where's my click? There we go. When we change a step, we say we know what we clicked, such as the new class step. We then grab the data for all of the options of classes, which is what we added earlier. That was just adding, here are all the classes and their enriched descriptions. For something more complicated, you might have to add like the list of talents and such. We then render that via the partial, and each one gets their own little column, and we replace that whole options list with all of those.
And this is using some of the core Foundry like built-in tab stuff as well, right?
Yes. Well, no. I don't know why.
Yes, but also no.
But yes, but also no. It's like a tab, except I'm replacing the list of what tabs exists every time you click a step.
Gotcha.
Caligo said, I noticed you refreshed after adding an item. Is that a limitation of how front-heavy the data preparation and caching is at the moment? The answer is yes, and we can fix it right here on stream. I'm a madman. I'll do it. I am slow. I'm starting to lose light, so, let's turn that on. Let's real quick fix why our submit didn't work. So let's do some live debugging. Let's see. There we go. We copied the alignment for submit heritage change. That doesn't make sense. So let's go look down at our submit. If this is a submit class change, it should have clicked that button. So why are we getting our heritage change? If we choose fighter, we also... you know what? I bet we're rendering this whole thing as a heritage class.
For anybody who wonders if the Foundry devs ever make mistakes or run into
All
errors.
the time.
Because I know... for me, getting started developing anything in Foundry, I was so nervous, and I was always like, well, I'm going to break something or I'm going to ruin something. And I was always so sure that like y'all always got it just right on the first try and everything. No. You're like, no, just do it.
So what I missed here is when you click the button, we attach a data type of what this is submitting, so we know what button you hit. And I still had it heritage from when I copy pasted it. So now if we go back to our actor and fighter and choose the wizard, ta-da, we are now a magic wielder. Relatively new to Foundry in a demo, I was told Safari is not well supported. Is this actual case or someone to reroute me? Yeah, so Safari, Matt, actually, I think you might be able to answer this better than I can.
Yeah, so I do have a Mac. I don't use Safari, but I can answer it a little bit. Safari isn't perfect for everything. It will generally work. I can't speak to animated background images specifically. I think that should work unless there's something specific in WebGL2 that's causing an issue with it. But I've seen animated backgrounds elsewhere, but I don't think those are normally pulled in quite the same way. You should be able to use Safari in general, but you will probably run into some inconsistencies because Safari doesn't have the latest web standards for WebGL2 and a number of other things. So it's one of those cases where I'd recommend connecting to the Foundry web demo if you don't already own Foundry, see how it works in Safari. You can also check out our GM demos where you can upload an animated map, see if it's working for you in Safari, and if it's not, maybe swap over to Chrome or Firefox or any other Chromium-based browser, because the Foundry application uses Electron, which uses Chromium. So any browser that uses that as its rendering engine, so if you want to go Microsoft Edge or something like that, you should be able to use that too.
So Caligo asked, about the rendering thing. I said, let's give it a whirl. So the problem is we prepare the list of what all exists when we first prepare an actor, and then we never touch it again. So if I add a new, lineage or class or whatever, it's not getting updated until I refresh and it prepares again. We can fix that. So let's show about how I would, let's do that. So Foundry has a powerful system called hooks. We're going to turn debugging for them on, and we're going to create a brand new class called, I don't know, Stabby Boy. Probably a rogue.
I did hear Scuttlebutt that that's what their first class was going to be called.
Scuttlebutt?
Yeah, Scuttlebutt, Gossip. I've been watching Battlestar Galactica, the remake, recently, and they talk about Scuttlebutt, and so now it's stuck in my head.
So, when we created this class, we can say we got a whole bunch of different things that got fired as hooks. But this one we particularly want is this create item hook. The create item hook came with the idea of what got created, the name, blah, blah, blah. And we can see in here, we can see its type. So we know that if someone creates or modifies a class, we probably want to reload that. So over in our code and our hooks, we're going to go ahead and create a new create item MVS. And we're going to need to hook up to it and our is the last ID actually user ID? I guess it might be. Anyway, we're actually going to run that to our create item, which we need to export default.
Calgo says yes, it's the user who made it.
Huh. There you go.
The more you know.
The more you know. Do Foundry devs know everything about Foundry? Also, no. It's real big. Yeah, I did export these as functions. So those are all the parameters. What we want to do is if this item is a class, update the config system class documents. And then, no, it got that slightly wrong. We actually want the full data. And actually this is a map, so we want to set imdata.id. If that was new, it will add it. If it exists, it will update it. So now if we refresh, it's on there. I forgot to import it.
Come on, Cody.
I know, I'm slowing down. I'm sorry, Matt.
It's okay. We'll get you a B12 shot and get you back up and running by the weekend. There.
Did I sell it? Alright, so we had Rogue, so if we go ahead and delete the item, if we did our job right, if we reopen this, ta-da, it's no longer on the list, and if we create a new one, what was that word you said earlier?
Scuttlebutt.
Scuttlebutt. Alright.
You can make a Scuttlebutt class.
what icon does the Scuttlebutt get?
Oh god, now I need to go through all of our icons. Go for one of the weird ones, like the ethereal magic looking ones.
Okay. Where's that? What?
if you open that magic subfolder, I think it has like just a bunch of weird icons and stuff in it.
Yeah, I need to know the subcategory.
Oh, yeah, right. What would a scuttlebutt be? It would probably be nature,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. Okay.
Classic scuttlebutt.
Oh, that's. Ooh. Mm, no. Oh. Yeah. Let's do the fungus. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it use magic? Does the skull button use magic?
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
With a name like scuttlebutt, you need a defense mechanism.
Yeah. So now we can see that Scuttlebutt is under our classes, and if we open up here, Scuttlebutt, there it is in our character builder, and we can choose it, and we can be it.
This game system is finally playable.
It's finally playable. So there you go, Caligo. That is how. You're right. Rogue is in this character builder. So clearly we have another bug. Why is the rogue in the character builder?
Uh-oh.
Alright, so when we get the list of stuff, we specifically get the options for classes. We just wrote that method. Let's submit.
Wow, Wesley Snipes uses Foundry VTT. Who would have guessed? We have a user in chat saying, using Foundry VTT for 3 years already. 2 Pathfinder APs finished. 1 is going on.
Nice.
Thanks for your hard work. We all love it, and we'll never switch to anything else again.
That's
We're
what I
going to
like
hold
to
you.
hear.
If you even look at another VTT, we're coming for you.
Okay, so when we get the character builder, we hit config system class documents, which I thought was what we updated on our hook. Config system class documents. Oh, you know what? What we're missing is if it's deleted. What we didn't do is we need a delete hook.
Oh.
Could probably make this then like just item crud. That's a technical term. Item crud.
Read, update, delete for anybody who's curious what that might mean.
Yeah, we actually want to not only update this on create, but we're going to go ahead and make a shared class and a delete it flag and if it's deleted, we're going to delete it instead. Otherwise, we're going to set it. And now in all of our CRUD updates, nope. We can just call that.
And before you get too far away from it, I was going to ask, because somebody said, what does that set do? And I think it's in your else statement.
Yeah, so the first one, the class documents is a map. It is a map of an ID to data. So setting it sets the new data to that, which either adds or overrides it. I am going to have a bad time with 2 export defaults. Actually, I want to rename this just update item because it handles its own types. And then over in my black flag, I'm going to import item create, item update, and item delete. I now we've hooked up all the CRUD operations and not just to create one.
Nice.
So now, if we go back here, we can see we have our fighter skill button wizard, and there it is here. If we choose fighter and then go and delete this accursed, fine, we won't delete it. We'll create a brand new class. We'll recreate our rogue. We do need to at least re-render the character sheet, although we could do that different too. There's our rogue. There's our rogue. And then we can go delete our rogue. Reopen our character sheet. Rogue's back off this list, and Rogue's no longer in our list of class options. So there we go. Live updating.
Like magic.
Like magic. And it's still a cached list. We only update it when something changes. Yes, there's a caching layer. We cache all those documents at config, system, in this case, class documents. It's a map. We can see for each entry in the map, like Scuttlebutt, its ID and its value of what's there. And if we go ahead and update Scuttlebutt and say he's too overpowered for being a magic user, we can, because we're updating it in real time, we can see system uses magic true before, and now system uses magic false now. And if we go back to our character builder and minimize this, we can see that it no longer renders that.
And if you're curious how other people will be able to add additional classes in the future, they'll be able to, I'm guessing, Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, on like an init, they'll be able to add to that config variable any classes that they want to be available as well, and they'll be added to the cache.
Yeah, so we talked about earlier, if you create something in your world, like our Scuttlebutt, it automatically pulls from it. If you install a module that is a third-party list of all the 12 kinds of Scuttlebutts in the world, published by Matt, from a counter library, it will load from that pack, and then it will load from anything in the system as well. So all of your homebrew should immediately work out of the box and get you start going with all your Scuttlebutt gameplay.
And I expect everybody to have a fully built Scuttlebutt just as soon as that module is out. So I think we force push that to master, or to main, and then we're done.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, really, this is, what else would you want out of the system, right? I suppose an inventory, I suppose, like, weapons and spells and skill checks and monsters to fight and monsters to seduce and...
Well, we haven't added a bard yet, so we don't need to work on that part of the system just yet. But I think that's a pretty good demonstration of, one, all the features that go into making a system, and then also how to add a feature to it. That was a much bigger implementation than I figured we'd actually get. I figured we'd just like click through the files and be like, this is where you would do it, but then you just went ahead and did it. And I just got to watch, and it was awesome.
Yeah, and honestly, if that kind of thing, like we used to back when Foundry was smaller and not like, I don't even know how many people, but back when Foundry was smaller, I remember watching along to Andrew live coding certain Foundry features and working on D&D 5e, and that's how I learned. And we're maybe hoping to like revive that with occasionally streaming, like, let's add some new features to Black Flag and things like that. There isn't a lot of easy features to add to D&D 5e anymore, right? But watching Foundry devs implement an inventory system for the first time, if that's interesting to you, let us know. We can try to find time to do that as a stream. And you could all judge my code in real time.
Or at least Copilot's code.
I mean, I'm still the one, signing the commits, so...
Yeah, that's true.
Copilot is great if you're repeating a pattern, but writing those patterns in the first place is still.
That's where you come in.
Yeah, that's where I come in. Um, we learned today that 80% of Cody's code is just Copilot. Yeah. Well, 50% of my name is Co. All right. Any other questions before we sign off for the day? It's nice to stream again, Matt. We should. I remember. Yeah. I don't know why we like stopped streaming as much, other than being crazy busy all the time. Probably that one.
Yeah, it comes down to like, do we push Foundry out faster, or do we stream and have fun? And most of the time we pick get Foundry out faster because we're excited about getting it out to everybody. But it is good to do streams and it's fun to talk to everybody and hopefully set up a new batch of developers to get started and start flooding us with module submissions and game system submissions.
Yep. And if you want to go download what you just looked at and find all of the bugs in it and report it for me to tell Caligo to fix, you can find the repo. Matt will drop it again. Install it today. Try out character building. Try out the character builder. Set up your own custom scuttlebutts. And look forward to when Kobold Press drops Playtest 2 and when we get it in Foundry. If you joined us for the first time and have never seen Foundry before, I hope you liked what you saw and make it your go-to place to play Black Flag in the future. All right.
I think you nailed it.
Signing off. Well, let's do the animatic on the way out again.
Good
Cheers,
to see
everyone.
Everybody.